Okay, in this video we're going to continue talking about navigating layers, some tips and tricks. I have 6 more tips for navigating layers, including selecting multiple layers at one time, grouping layers, moving layers around, and changing your layer thumbnail size. So if I click on this, I select it. If I click on that, select it. So you can just select individual things. If you select on the top one, you can also go down here and click Shift and click, and you'll select all 3 of them. I could do that with the bottom too, but I don't want the bottom, so I'm gonna click Control and unselect that one. So you can click the top, and then you can click Control and select this one, and you'll only select the ones that you clicked on. Or you can click up here and click Shift and select everything in between. You can also group them, and you can either right click and click on Group from Layers, or you can just hit Control G, Command G on a Mac, and now I've created a group for these. And you can even rename the group, so I could call this Face Edits or something like that if I wanted. And then you have a little arrow here where you can drop the group down so you can see what's in it. But again, if you have 10 or 15 or 20 or even more adjustment layers on one image for various parts of the image, then you put them into good groups and you can just collapse them all down, and you'll be able to see everything. Otherwise, you have it going off the bottom of the page here, and it can be difficult to get to things. Okay, let me open up this group again, and I'll show you one thing real quick. I'm just going to grab this picture of her face and drag it into this other one just for a second so I can show you something. So this is kind of like what we did with our cappuccino mug, right? Where we dropped it as a layer onto another image. So you see I now have this layer here, and I'm selected on it. Now if you're not on auto select up here in your option menu, I'm in the move tool, so you need to hit the V key to be in the move tool, and I go to click on the background and move it, it's not going to let me. I'm going to grab the layer that I'm selected on in the layers panel. So if I want to be selected on the background, I can either go over here and manually click it and select it, or I can go hover over it and I can hit the Control or Command key and I can click on the background. Now it's locked, so it's not letting me select it, but let's do that. Let's unlock it so you can see what I mean. The reason it won't let me select it when it's locked is because it's not allowing you to move it, which is how it should be. But this is just for an example. So I hit Control or Command and I click. That'll select that layer. And if I want to select this layer while I'm in the canvas, the reason this is helpful is because then you don't have to go back and forth and back and forth, is you just go Command and click, and now I've got this layer. Okay, so that's how you select. And if you have a lot of different objects or elements in your image, this is really helpful. Just remember, you turn auto select off and hit Control or Command on a Mac and click on what you want to select. So if her face was a separate layer, then I would hit Control and click on her face to select that, and it'll select that layer, so that then if you're going to say do an adjustment to that layer, it'll be on that layer and not on something else. Or say you're going to brush onto that layer, you want to make sure you're selected on there. If you can't find the layer here, then you can come over to the layers panel and manually select it, but it's slower. And then just a kind of navigational tip, if I click down here and right click, you have some sorting options. Right now these are on small thumbnails, which is these little guys, but you can go to large thumbnails, which sometimes can be helpful because then you can see what's actually in that layer. Or if you're running out of space, you can go to no thumbnails, and that will consolidate things so you can fit more layers and see more layers. But generally I leave it on small thumbnails because that's sufficient to be able to see what you're doing. And then one other thing you'll notice is down here it says clip thumbnails to layer bounds and clip thumbnails to document bounds. So let me first go to large thumbnails to make this easier to see. So you can see this one, right? This layer, this is the image, but it shows you in the thumbnail where it's located in that layer. So we have all these blank pixels over here. This one fills up the whole screen, and so in the thumbnail it fills up the whole screen. But if I right click and click clip thumbnails to layer bounds, watch what happens. It's just going to show the whole image. It's not going to show me where it sits in the layer. And both can be helpful for different reasons, but in general you want it to show document bounds because then you know where this little piece is in the grand scheme of the canvas. Okay, let me go back to my small thumbnails. And then you'll notice one other thing. When I brought this layer in, it dropped it into this group. If I don't want it in that group, I can take it out of the group by bringing it up above. So now it's by itself. And depending on where you drag and hold this, it tells you where it's going to end up. So for instance, if I go down slowly and it goes like this and surrounds the group name, then it's going to drop it into that group. Whereas, let's go back to when it was up here. Whereas if I bring it down and I go down here, it's going to put it in order in the group. So if I want it at the bottom of the group, I put it here. Or if I want it in the group, I put it there. Or you can layer it wherever you want within the group. Or if you want to take it out of the group entirely, there's a subtle shift here, but you kind of go like that. Yeah, there we go. And so you just have to get it far enough down essentially to drop it out of the group. And then you'll see if I close the group, this one is still on its own. But with a subtle shift of dragging this upward, I drop it like that. See, it shifts over a little bit, and that means it's in the group. And you can always tell by minimizing the group to tell what's actually included in that group. So anyway, we'll take this out of the group again, and there it is. Okay, so that's a little bit about how to navigate through the layers and how to organize them and use them to your advantage. In the next video, we'll talk a little bit about some of these things up here and what they do. So go play with that, and then I'll see you in the next lecture.